This episode may contain adult themes and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Sorry.
What's the trick in making my love stick? What's the trick?
Hello, and welcome to the Film Critic and the Common Man podcast. While other film podcasts might go make a documentary, but we know when to shut up and let the subjects talk. Every episode, we discuss a film from the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of a common man. You may not agree, but it certainly won't be boring. I am your co-host, Ben Miller. I write about films for my own site, Ice Cream for Freaks, and a member of the North Texas Film Critics Association, as well as the International Film Society Critics. You can hear me guest on other pods of the David Lewis of podcasting. I enjoy my brother and common man co-host, the only man I trust to bring enough cigarettes on a hike, Jake Miller. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, bud. I can't promise I won't get you lost, but I'll have fucking smokes.
I do really enjoy like that aspect of it. After a while, you know, they're pissed off and they have this little moment right near the end of the movie where they're like, hey, I found some cigarettes, and there's like, yes, like it was the only thing that was keeping them all sane. So our October miniseries continues. This is our smallest budgeted movie. It's the most independent one we have. I can't imagine us covering one cheaper than this. It's the Blair Witch Project, directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, written by those two as well, starring Heather Donahue, Michael Williams, and Joshua Leonard, and pretty much nobody else. Opening date on January 23rd, 1999 at the Sundance Film Festival. It went wide on July 14th, 1999, and it was successful. It was who man did it make money? It's the Guinness World Record. It currently holds the Guinness World Record for the most successful money for profit. It made 140 million in the US, 108 international, 248 million on a $60,000 budget. I think somebody did the math and they said it made $10,000 for every dollar spent. So I mean,
there's really no other way to get that kind of an ROI.
And I'm going to go into some of those later, but I mean, it's such a rare case. It really came out of nowhere. I mean, that's what kind of Sundance is for. It's for like, hey, we want to submit these indies, indie films for distributions, and so people get to put eyes on your movie and be like, oh, caused a bidding war, they bought it, and the box office was out of control. No big name awards. Did win the John Cassavetes Award at the Independent Spirit Awards. That's the best film under $500,000. Did get 2 Razzie nominations, which kind of surprised me. Nomination for Worst Picture, 1 Best Actress, Worst Actress for Heather Donahue. I think it's a little unfair, but regardless.
I do too.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Rotten Tomatoes. This one is the most shocking one we've had so far. 86% for critics. I didn't expect that to be that high. 56 audience. Like,
yeah.
How can you have 56 audience with a $250 million rake in? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, regardless. So, okay, Jake. So this was your pick. And we were talking about doing the miniseries on scary movies and stuff like that. And you said this is one of the few movies that truly scares you.
Yeah, it's one that actually freaks me out. Like, and I think it's probably because, I mean, I have always enjoyed hiking, camping, being outdoors.
Yeah.
You know, I've spent many a night in a tent, things like that. I think the thing that really terrifies me about this movie, or that thing that gets under my skin, is just the unknown. You never identify anything really.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we'll get into that too as well. But I mean, nothing is ever seen. It's all in your imagination. It's all something, whatever's out there, whatever's in your head is way scarier than the actual thing that can be shown on screen. So
exactly. If a giant alien pops out in front of me, I'm like, okay, shoot it.
I can figure that out. Even the most wild thing, like
Yeah.
exactly. I will go ahead and go through the quick synopsis for this film. This is based off this is the first. It's not the first, but it's one of the pillars of found footage horror films. It's supposedly was a found footage of a discarded cameras of 3 young filmmakers who had gone missing in October of '94. Film students Heather, Mike, and Josh want to make a documentary about the fabled Blair Witch. And so they go to Burkittsville, Maryland, and interview residents about the legend. Talk about this old hermit who lived in the woods, kidnapped children, murdered in a basement, and had murdered them in pairs, and one would stand against the wall while the other be murdered. And so they're like, well, let's make a documentary about this. So they head out there and they hike out to this rock and find all this kind of stuff. And it's just essentially them in the woods, pretty much documenting everything. And they find piles of rocks and they accidentally kick one over, and it's very, very innocuous. So they start camping one night and they hear like twigs snapping, and then they're like, okay, well, this is kind of weird. It's like somebody must be out there. I was like, okay, let's just go back. We got to get back anyway. So they start to hide back to the car and they can't find it. They're essentially lost in the woods. And Heather has the map and can't figure out what's going on. The most frustrating part of the movie, Mike, for some reason, kicks the map into the water out of frustration. And I got one slight look at the map. I think it was like not like a nautical map, but whatever, like a topographical. Yes. So it's not like one that anybody could just read. So they get lost, and so they decide to start heading south using the compass. And then they see all these stick figures in the trees. They get really freaked out. They keep fighting, hearing strange sounds, including kids laughing. At one point, their tent's all shaken. And then they hide in the woods. They run out of the woods, hide. And they never really see anything. But then they come back and all their stuff's rifled through. There's a bunch of slime. They don't know what's going on. And then they finally keep hiking, and they run past a river that they've gone through before, and more despair, more upset. And they're just really upset about everything and just kind of at their wits' end. Then that night, Josh disappears and they can't find him. They look, and they get really freaked out. That next night, when they still can't reach their car, they're camping in their tent. They hear Josh screaming, and that freaks them out even more. They wake up the next morning. They see a bunch of twigs tied, or Heather finds a bunch of twigs tied together and finds a tooth, a finger, I think a part of a tongue. She's really freaked out. They keep looking around. Yeah, not great.
Something someone didn't want to lose.
Yeah. It's one thing if it's like, oh, so there's some hairs, like that can be explained away. It's like, a tooth and a finger and a tongue. It's like, yeah, not so much. So she kind of breaks down and apologizes on camera. The next night they find an abandoned house, and ingenious decide to go in because they hear Josh screaming. They go to the basement, and you see Mike's camera get knocked down. Heather follows right behind him. She sees Mike standing in the corner. Camera gets knocked down. End of movie. Presumably all dead. So,
guess so.
And it's funny. I watched this movie much more as the thing that kind of unsettled me about this movie wasn't necessarily all the freaky stuff. It's just like, man, being lost in the woods, being lost. The idea of being deserted, like. There's nobody I can call, and this is the last possible time this movie could have been made.
Yep.
Because a couple of years in the future,
absolutely, you
have cell phones, you have GPS, all that kind of stuff, and your problems are solved. Now, this is kind of a sub question to that. Were they actually lost, or was it some supernatural thing?
Well, it's like, because I was watching it and I was like, okay, and I have experience with land navigation and compasses and reading maps and stuff like that. But even if you just had a compass and you're like the roads to the east,
yes, and
then just go east and get there. But yeah, I can't imagine how freaky it would be, like if you think you're doing everything right, and
You show up
you're
at the same
going in
place.
circles again.
And see that, so a lot of the reception of this movie was criticized kind of for the actors in authenticity, and maybe in the early spots whenever they're hiking into the woods. But man, when they get lost and they start getting frustrated at each other, it's like, boy,
Yeah.
I felt all that real, like, because they're hungry, they're cold, they're wet, like nothing is going correctly, nothing is right. Like you said, when they're out of cigarettes, they're the parts of this movie I really clung to were the little human parts where they're talking about, oh, what do you want? It's like, oh, I
pumpkin pie with ice cream.
My mom's mashed potatoes. Like, it's like, yes, it's like those are some really cool little human parts of it that make the scary parts even that much worse, because it's like, oh, these people are pretty human.
Yeah, they've got and I think that comes out also, kind of in the famous scene from this movie where it's a close up.
Mm-hmm.
And she's crying and got a snotty nose, and she's saying, "I'm sorry to Josh's mom and Mike's mom and my mom."
It's
and
so raw. Yeah.
It's like, it kind of reminds you, they're scared kids out in the woods, I guess. And that makes it scarier for the viewer, I guess.
Yeah, it's like there's a really terrifying website you can go to where you can see the last words of airlines that have crashed in the black box recordings. It's very much it's you're not accepting your fate, but you're like, oh no, this is a situation. This is a serious situation. And Heather Donahue gets all the flack, and it's like she's really annoying, and I get all that, but it's all worth it, because there's a reason this is the lasting image of the film, because that is a really dynamic scene.
Yeah, it's real up close and personal, and most of the time, I mean, she's annoying, and like up until then, I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Yes. Turn the camera off. Stop talking. Yes.
Yeah, like there's one point when she's like, the guys aren't talking to me, and I'm like, when no one will talk to you, that's a good time to shut up.
You're right. Yeah. And it's like, why are you filming this right now? And that,
right.
And the guys are frustrated at her. It's like, you do not have to be filming 24/7. There's no advantage to this. Now, whenever they're running out and like, okay, let's try to get this on camera. It's like that. Okay. I get that part. Like, I understand that. But I mean, there's a lot of the early parts. I think
at some point you're like, get the camera out of my face.
Yes.
Like, we're actually in a real problem here. And you're trying to, this is basically me at, when we have to take family Christmas pictures. I'm like, get that out of my face.
It's like,
I'm sick of it.
Here. Okay, hold on. 1, 2, 3. And then
and I'm like, we've got at least 3 or 4. Let's
you can't tell me we haven't gotten it. So we talk about the documentary style of this. I'm not a film major. I never took film classes. But I've seen, and you're a big fan of documentaries. So, and I've seen my fair share. But I know the basic idea of documentaries is just like, now I did take a lot of journalism classes and did a lot of journalism adjacent stuff. You try not to make yourself too much of the story. The story is about everything else. And at the early scene, they're talking to that crazy old lady, and they're talking to her outside her RV, and they keep asking her questions, and she'll respond, and then she interrupts, and the respondent interrupts. And I'm thinking, now as the person who edits this podcast, I would think, man, that would be an editing nightmare, just trying to edit your own words out to try to get some coherent sentence of what she's saying. And I've got a couple questions on that here in a minute, but I think one of the great modern documentarians who I follow is Mike Rowe.
I'm sure you're familiar with him, Dirty Jobs.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like that. Well, I heard a thing from him where he explained the premise of Dirty Jobs, and he was like, I didn't want to be the host of the show. Basically, I wanted them to be the host and me be the guest.
Yeah.
Is take me along, show me what's involved in this, instead of saying, I'm the host of the show and here's a guest.
It's very much of him. Hey, show me what to do because I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, that's
exactly.
It's the exact opposite of what it was supposed to be. And like, if you think of all the best documentaries, if you think of, Free Solo, the example I think of, like, those documentarians are right on the edge, and they do have to deal with some things of themselves in the documentary about, like, what is the ethical line of us potentially seeing this guy die. But at the same time, that's a small part of it. The bulk is the subject. Like, it's not, hey, I have a question for you, and then stop him. He's like, no, let it breathe. Like, but okay. So on the documentary side of things, so based on the actual Blair Witch, the problem that a lot of people had with this movie was motion sickness. Is that something you had a problem with? That is.
No, I didn't have a problem with it. My wife said she kind of did.
My wife did too.
Yeah. And I'll get motion sick, like if I'm a passenger in a car. But it didn't treat me too bad. I mean, there was times when I was like, settle it down. I'm tired of. Yeah.
I didn't think much about it. Like, I knew going in that a lot of people had the complaint, and I was like, okay, well, I'll come in with that kind of idea. And I guess I just had my expectations where it wasn't as bad. Like, there are some movies, like, you seen Gravity, where Sandra Bullock is an astronaut? So there are parts of that movie that I'm like, okay, this has got to stop spinning. Like, I don't do Disney. I can do some, like, roller coasters and things like that. Teapots, that's an end of my day. And Dizzy is the end of my day. And that's the problem with Gravity. You see her spinning, and it's like, okay, you need to stop this. Now, this was the shakies a lot, but I mean, I was able to handle it.
Yeah. It didn't hit me too bad. I mean, but it is chaotic. But it reminds me of like our mom, her complaint about our granddad's family VHS tapes was. That's what it reminds me of. It's just like so much shaking around and moving.
Yeah. Our grandpa had hand trimmers, so it kind of didn't help things. But I mean, at the same time, you see those. Yeah, you see all those things through. So after the Blair Witch Project was a runaway success, unsurprisingly, sequels came. They made a sequel called Blair Witch 2: The Book of Shadows. It was an absolute bomb on all accounts.
I'd imagine.
It was, so essentially they kind of took the idea, this is my guess. They had a script about a scary movie, and they're like, let's just make it Blair Witch 2 and have that be the thing that is the reason it happens. It doesn't have any really connection to the old one, besides, like, the movie, like, the characters in the movie are fans of the movie, of the 99 Blair Witch. And you're just like, now they did another one a couple years ago. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's a little better. It's a direct sequel to this one. Like, the sister of Heather is looking for her, and they go in the woods, and things get a little wackier than that. Maybe worth checking out. I'm not sure. I don't really know anybody that's seen it.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even know there was any other sequels or anything. So.
I mean, yeah, but still. Okay, so is there anybody in this movie, like, okay, Heather is kind of the annoying one. Josh is kind of, I don't really know how to classify him. I guess the more aggressive of them. And I guess Mike is the one where you're kind of like, okay, you're kind of a tag along, but he probably made the biggest mistake of everybody. So, I mean, it's funny how the characters are so unsympathetic for the first half of the movie. Like
Mhm.
you're not really on board with anybody. And then just the idea of somebody's terror just is like, man, this is so, I don't want to actually see somebody die.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. Yeah, they kind of make them all kind of unlikable
Yeah.
at the beginning. And maybe that's intentional as like, young, head in the clouds, kind of like
Nothing can hurt
college.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, like college kids,
Yeah.
just got out of, journalism school or something like that.
I'm
Okay,
making a
we'll go.
documentary. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and
But
like if you remade it today, that would be like, oh, they'd be Gen Z guys, they're vaping and all that kind of stuff. But like we said, this is the last possible time this movie works. Nowadays, there's
yeah.
no chance because GPS and whatever various things, you have to make it super supernatural. And the thing that makes this work is it all feels like it actually might have happened. And like it almost at points you're just like, are they just kind of freaking out? Like,
Well, and that's what I thought of. I would compare this to the thing we discussed.
yeah.
Is there really a monster, or is everyone just going nuts from
Yeah.
spending too much time in Antarctica? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
how long do you get lost out in the woods before you start hearing shit and believing stuff and running off and
It's
so yeah.
and it's even like I think of this is just kind of my view of it is I looked at it as like those woods don't look too bad. Like it says looks pretty even. Like not a whole lot of elevation change. Like when I think of like woods stuck in the woods, I think of like British Columbia. Like
Right.
it's like if you're dropped in the middle of there, not only are you in the middle of a really desolate place and whatever the elements and all that kind of stuff, you're not within 300 miles of anybody. So
Right.
now, Maryland, you might run into a street all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like where we used to take fishing trips, fishing trips up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nah, you kiss your ass goodbye, pretty much.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's probably the one thing about this movie. Like if I would have said, okay, how would you fix this movie that you can't really fix? Like, okay, make one thing. I'm not saying like replace Heather or anything like that. I'm like, put it somewhere more desolate. Like, because I feel like they should have run into something. Like if they're in Maryland walking for 3 days in the same direction, they'll run into something.
Mm-hmm.
And
and Heather even says at one point, like, this is America.
Yes.
It's really hard to get lost, and it's even harder to stay lost.
She's not wrong.
But whenever she said that, she goes, I disagree, bitch. Like, but it's because the areas I travel in are much more desolate.
And it's a different it's a different kind of desolation though. Like
yeah, absolutely.
But you're right. Like somebody knew like
there are places to get lost, but probably not Maryland.
Now there's this is kind of a nerdy thing having to do with camera ideas. So whenever I was in college, we were allowed to check out television style cameras, like on your shoulder. We're allowed to check them out, but we had to sign waivers each time. And like we could get kicked out of school if we didn't bring them back, because I think they were like $47,000.
Yeah,
they were really expensive. And whenever they're like, "We got to get back. I got work tomorrow. I got to bring the camera back," and I'm like, "Oh no!" That was the thing that really stuck to me. I was like, "Oh no, you brought that camera back. You got to get that camera back."
Yeah. I'm gonna lose my scholarship
exactly.
if I don't.
Like, how am I gonna be? Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh man, Mrs. Browning's gonna kill me. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a funny thing to think about. I'm looking at the map of Maryland right now, and I'm looking at the map of where essentially Burkittsville is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't imagine in the last 25 years it's that much of a difference. But I look at it and I'm like, okay, you're gonna run into some road path,
At least-
city, something.
At least like a farm to market road or something.
Something. Yeah. So I mean, I think of the same. I think it was like I do agree with Heather. It is kind of hard to get lost. Like it at least and there was a part of me also, it was like, this is America. We're civilized. This is not, we're not out in the woods.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so-
And I think that's their biggest problem, is that hubris, and they
They're naive, yep.
underestimated their environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think now I'm the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking like, okay, I think it was probably supernatural things keeping them there. Like why all of a sudden they found
Right.
that shack, and why all of a sudden was those sticks
Yeah.
there, and like, yeah. So I mean,
Or you head east all day, and that's what your compass says, but
Yeah,
somehow
yeah.
you cycle back around to the same stream.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean,
so it must be a supernatural. Yeah.
that's kind of the thing I think. This is one of the first movies to ever get like viral marketing type,
Hmm.
having those type of things. Like this is, viral wasn't really a thing back in 99. I guess it came further along, but the idea is like, okay, there's this little bitty movie. It opened on very little screens, got seen by a couple, and then it just kind of build and build and build and
Yep.
build. And then all of a sudden it makes $250 million.
Yeah.
And it was a thing that we have parodied ourselves just in our general life of getting a camera, and here, for the viewers at home.
Yeah.
I'm so scared. I'm so scared right now. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, it was such a thing, and I think I want to say it was
Yeah.
Scary Movie. They parodied it where like she was
Yes.
like it was dripping. And don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, I was watching and I was like, "Come on, girl, wipe your nose." Like,
Yeah.
but like I said, it's the best part of it's the good part of
Yeah.
the movie. The three actors had some. I was looking it up, and the three actors are Heather Donahue, Michael Williams, and Joshua Leonard. Heather Donahue got kind of the most flack from this movie, but she didn't really. And she was in some small things, but she kind of couldn't really escape the idea of the movie. And nobody could really escape her. She sells legal weed now. I looked it up. So good for her.
Yeah, I'll get her info from you here in a minute.
It's good to know. I think she changed her name too. She has a Ree Hance. So yeah, I mean, take that as you will. Michael Williams, the guy who played so that is, yeah. Let's see. So yeah, that was
They're
Mike.
all named the same thing.
They
right?
are. Yeah. There's Mike. Is the other one Josh?
Michael's Mike and Joshua is Josh.
Yes.
And Heather's Heather.
So
I think.
Mike did a little bit of stuff, a little bit of TV, not really much. He runs a little theater. He's a manager of a little theater in New York. Seems like just a small time guy. Doesn't really have any desire to do much else. Now the guy who played Joshua Leonard, has been in a lot of stuff. He's been working pretty consistently since the Blair Witch Project came out. The next year he was in the Men of Honor, a classic.
Oh yeah.
Cuba Gooding
yeah.
Jr. Navy movie.
Yeah.
A lot of various stuff. The Tim Allen remake of the Shaggy Dog. Various things like that. I saw him in a movie a couple of years ago called 4 Good Days. He's okay. I mean, he's been really steady. He's got a lot of credits. Like the other two are just in a few things and done. This guy is like, okay, I'm going to be a character actor for the rest of my life. Good for him.
Yeah.
Still hanging on. Still in more stuff, I'm sure, later this year. He was just in an episode of MacGyver. So I mean, you're still going hard. So whatever, man.
Well, work is work, man.
Tell you what. So,
I mean,
okay.
if it's paycheck's a paycheck.
I know, being a character actor. Okay, so I think the funniest thing about this movie is the actual documentary, is because like they're trying to do a documentary on the Blair Witch, and I don't know anything about the Blair Witch. I don't know what necessarily. I don't know if it's a woman, if it's a man, because the guy they're talking about who's killing people in the corner, that's a guy. And then they were talking about ritualistic hearings on this rock. So I don't really like, do you have a grasp of actually what is happening? Or is it that more of adding to it? Just like whatever's in your mind, that's what's there.
Yeah, no, I have no idea. But what it reminds me of, I remember whenever they're doing kind of the interviews of the locals at the outset.
Yeah.
And one guy says, oh, it's a story my grandma used to tell us to keep us from staying up too late.
Yeah.
Well, my wife, who's Hispanic, she grew up with
La Llorona,
yeah, La Llorona and El Cucuy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's
so I mean, and it's basically just one of those other tales to scare the shit out of kids so that they don't act bad, basically.
It's a way to traumatize kids at a young age. I thought that was a really cool thing. Like, the coolest part of like the early documentary stuff is they talk to like they're like at a 7-Eleven. They're like, you heard of the Blair Witch? It's like, yeah. It's like, will you tell us about it? Next thing they're outside and he's like going in depth and he's like telling all this kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, this is a great guy to be talking to. Like, I like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you if you knew, like, whoever played Crazy Mary, the old crazy
man.
Like, I was like, I don't know if that's an actor. Or, I mean, if they just went to this town and talked to because that was convincing. If she ain't crazy, she tricked me.
Yeah, that's a good
like, and the dudes fishing in the stream and stuff like that. They all looked very genuine, like small town people. And so I was wondering, did they present it like, hey, we're just shooting a local documentary, get their permission to be on, and then, or were they actors?
So it looks like, the woman playing Mary Brown, she has one credit and it is the Blair Witch Project. Her name is Patricia Deku. She's from New Orleans. Says she was an actress, but I mean, I don't like the fact that she has no other. Okay, sorry. So she looks like she was the art technician on the Blair Witch Project. So she was like, it was like it was a crew member, and they're like, hey, Julie, not to Patricia, not to be mean, you look like a creepy lady in the woods. Do you want to go hop in here?
Right.
I mean, this movie was made for $60,000, even for an independent movie. That is remarkably cheap. Like,
well, I was saying, I mean, you can't hardly buy a new car for that.
No,
nowadays. So,
I mean, you think of the movies that are being made these days, like even independent films. You're like, okay, you know, if you're talking about, hey, can you please? So I talked to a director from Finland, and she makes very small human movies, and her big thing was, I can't get people to pay me to make movies because movies are so expensive to make, just because of, you know, the insurance, the unions, the actors, the cameras. Now certain things, certain people kind of pushing back on that kind of things, based on those things. But I mean, you just try to get those things to happen. It's movies are super expensive to make. The cheapest movies, like nowadays, you're like, man, it was only made for $11 million. You're like, $11 million is an astronomical amount of money.
Yeah, you got to think about the investment that goes into that might not work.
Yes. This is why. You know? This is why they made a lot of money off of this. They love these movies because they're cheap and they're easy to market. Hey, want to be scary? Scary. That's all. That's like, they don't have to really go beyond that. They're like, ooh, this is and in this case, the thing they did really smart is they had the 3 actors and they put them on IMDb and they put them as missing presumed dead.
Oh,
so
wow,
whenever you look them up, you're like, who's this actor? You're like, oh shit, is this real? Like, are we watching a snuff film? Like, it's like, it's all part of the thing. But I mean, it's a good little thing.
It worked.
Yeah, it worked, obviously. Okay, buddy, it is time for my favorite segment of each episode, Pull for a Dumbass. Each week, I go through the filmography of a filmmaker and put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. We're going to really switch things up this week. Instead of necessarily talking about a filmmaker or an actor, I'm going to talk about movies that made a whole lot of money off of a very little budget. We're going to go through 15 movies. They range all sorts of years, all sorts of levels of success, but they were all just runaway successes in their own sort of way. Okay, so we're going to start with a film. I think it's from 2004. Kind of a version of found footage, although there is like a camera person. Made for $500,000, made $50 million. Open Water.
Open Water.
Open Water. It's a husband and wife who go scuba diving, and they get forgotten by the boat, and they come up and they're by themselves. Yes.
Yes, I have seen it.
It's a funny movie because if you shut your eyes, it sounds like pornography. It's you shut your eyes and you just hear, baby, oh my gosh, what was that? Because they're in water, so they're exhausted the whole time, so it just sounds very like pornographic.
Keep going, Ben. No one can keep making the noises. I am gonna try it.
All right, on to the next. Yes, you've seen the Blair. Yes, you've seen the Blair Witch Project. As we said, $60,000 budget, $248 million. That's the on this list. That's the second highest grossing movie on the list. I have a movie that made more money than that. It was a higher budget, but I'll get to that. How about another early 2000s made for $400,000, made $46.1 million. Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes.
I have not seen it all the way through, but I've seen so many parts of it. It's just one of those. If you ask, hey, why was Napoleon Dynamite successful? It's like, I don't know, man. The early 2000s were weird.
Yeah.
It's just
I don't know why. It just works.
It just caught that little, it's like come on, Tina, eat your food. All that kind of like the little fun little nichey things.
The one-liners and yeah.
So a lot of the themes of a lot of these movies are scary movies. Just because you can just don't have to market them much. It's just like scary. So go watch these scary movies. $325,000 budget, $47 million take. The original Halloween.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The movie that launched the career of Jamie Lee Curtis. The kind of the tentpole for how horror movies kind of came to be, slasher movies in general as well. We talked about it in the last episode a little bit. Made for $1.2 million and brought home $104 million. Started a franchise which brought well over $1 billion. Saw.
Oh yeah.
See, that's a movie I originally was really, really fond of. Just because it did such interesting things the first time I ever saw it. You're like, this is nothing like anything else. And then they got lazy kind of as it went along. Did you see any other Saw movies besides the first one?
No, I think it's only been I think I've only seen the first one.
So, and I watched the second one, and it's one of those, there's a scene in the second one where a girl searches through hypodermic needles. And so she has to, and you're just like, ooh, it's so terrifying. Like that's
the second one.
That's the second one. Yeah.
I've seen that then.
I've seen the second and the third one. I don't think I've seen anything else. I think there's 8 of them. And I think they rebooted it already. They're all really inexpensive and they make like 50 million. So I don't understand why they don't do them. Another theme, not necessarily in this list, but in general, documentaries, very inexpensive to make a lot of times. Made for $65,000, $22.2 million gross. Super Size Me.
Yes, I have seen it.
I haven't actually seen that. I know everything that goes along with it. It's just like, well, let's just go to McDonald's and get fat and kind of record what went from there. Did it make you not? I mean, I know how much of a fan you are of McDonald's anyway.
I like their breakfast.
Yeah, there you go. But it definitely doesn't make you want to keep going there.
Well, no, I mean, it's just, man, I eat crappy. And I'm on the road all the time. I eat like crap. And
I'm always of the belief, like, you shouldn't go to McDonald's and be upset that you had bad food, or, it's like, I don't feel gross. You're at McDonald's.
It's the fair cheeseburger.
Yes.
That's what you.
Yes. You're not supposed to be eating well. It's like, why did my face feel greasy? It's like, you just had McDonald's. Of course it does. Yeah.
Right.
Another horror entry, a movie I have not seen, $1.5 million, $99.8 million intake, Insidious.
That's
the one.
Yeah, I'm almost positive I've seen it.
Is it a creepy kid? It's supernatural. Directed by James Wan, who does a lot of stuff like that. Let's see here. It looks like it is a creepy kid. It's a married couple, and they have a kid who hits his head and falls into a coma. And then he wakes up and it starts getting weird.
Yeah.
Oh, you have seen it?
Yep. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
You're undefeated on this so far. This is actually impressive.
Woo-hoo!
So I've seen most of Napoleon Dynamite. I'll count it. I haven't seen Super Size Me or Insidious. Now, this one I did see. I saw in the theaters with our other brother. Made for $15,000. It's one of the cheaper films. I think it actually is the cheapest film on the list. $15,000, $194 million take. Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
It was creepy. It was what it was supposed to be. And you're like, wow, what a creepy thing. And then they made like 7 more of them, and they weren't as creepy. And
right.
Like,
that was only like how much?
$15,000 budget.
What?
It's just a camera and a tripod. There's what the people staying in bed. They probably heard. I mean, it's you think back on it. Yeah. I mean, they put a fishing line on a bed sheet and slightly pulled it away. I mean, and a lot of your imagination does the thing. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So this next one is probably the one that is known as the original, like, made for no money, made a huge money and changed lives. Made for $1 million, $117 million take. And this was in 1977. Rocky.
Yeah.
1976, excuse me. I mean, changed the life of everybody involved with it.
Yeah,
it made
absolutely.
sequel after sequel. It created boxing. There's a statue of a fictional character in Philadelphia because of this movie. And 117 million in 1976 is not the same as 117 million these days. That's a way bigger number.
And plus, I mean, Michael B. Jordan and Creed not too long ago. And,
yep.
Yeah, so it's really become
a whole thing. Yep. So this is the one I'm confident you haven't seen. It's a personal favorite of mine. Made for $150,000, brought in $20.7 million and won an Oscar. The film Once. It is about a Irish busker, and he kind of links up with this. I want to say she's some Scandinavian woman who's a singer, and they decide they kind of have some chemistry, and they go decide to make an album. And they make really nice music. It's like a musical. It's like a street musical film. Really sweet movie. It's an Oh Brother Where Art Thou type movie where all the music happens organically. Really sweet, really cute movie. Won an Oscar for Best Original Song. Kind
of a Star Is Born, but without the sadness?
Yeah. There's a little melody. Like, nobody's famous. Like, it's nobody's trying to become somebody. But the become somebody is not necessarily like, we're going to be superstars. We're just like, we just want to make nice music. Like, and they kind of want to fall in love as well. Like, it's a sweet movie. I highly recommend you check it out.
Okay.
Another one that we have seen, we saw it together the first time we ever saw it, and we saw it camping in the woods. Made for $550,000, brought in $92.7 million. Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Yes. Watched it watching our uncle's camper. Laughed the whole time.
Yeah. We basically just made fun of it. Yeah.
I still always remember the headless guy or the headless woman with her hands going like this as she falls away from the camera. That's my lasting image of that movie. Okay, so this next one is so Jake, so far you're 10 for 11. This is absolutely your best. So this one is the highest budgeted movie, but considering the budget for what it is and what it made, it's still impressive. $6.4 million budget, made $78.4 million. The original Terminator.
Yeah.
It's looking back on it and in all the kind of stuff it does, it's like, that's pretty impressive. They were able to stretch the money of that.
That is, I mean, that was pretty revolutionary special effects too, to
like robots and being chased through and all the cool stuff. And then the funny thing is the second movie was at the time the most expensive movie ever made. So just the as the flip side of that. So just to put it on the other side of it. Another one, super cheap, 114,000, made $18 million. One of two movies our mother has walked out of, The Night of the Living Dead. I'm going to say no. I haven't seen it.
Living Dead.
It's black and white. The original zombie movie.
Oh, it's an original.
The original, the old one. Like.
Okay, no.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, that's one of our mom. Big movie fans. She never walks out of movies. She walked out of that one when she was younger. She just hated it. Okay, another movie that launched careers, made for $200,000 and made $100 million. The original Mad Max.
Yes, I've seen. Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen the original Mad Max. I've seen The Road Warrior, and I think I've seen Thunderdome, and I've definitely seen Fury Road, but I don't think I've ever seen the original, even though I do own it.
You own it, but you haven't watched it.
It happens. It was I have a 4-pack of all the Mad Max movies.
Oh, okay.
So this is like that was bought for, but like it's just I haven't gotten around to it. So okay, so we are down to our last one. So you are 12 for 14 right now. I don't know if you have seen this movie. So this movie was made for $5 million. It was an independent movie based on a woman and a one-woman show. It grossed $368 million. It was nominated for an Oscar. It spawned a sequel. It is My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, nah. I know of it, but I have
seen it.
I have not seen it. No.
So it's cute. It's not bad. It's harmless. Like it's a sweet little like you know those things where you're like, oh, this is a movie. Like I think a movie just came out called Easter Sunday about a Filipino family, and it's just filled with the Filipino in jokes. That's what this is for My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's just nothing but Greek jokes. But it's still cute and harmless. Fun fact, so Nia Vardalos is the star of that. And the co-star, the man, is named John Corbett, who, if you're like, that doesn't really sound familiar. If you saw his face, you'd recognize him. He is one.
He's the guy from Northern Exposure? Or...
No, that's a different,
Wings.
A different guy. No, a different guy again. Okay, so hold on. I'm going to bring this all together now. So he has been a character actor in a lot of things. We talked about the film Tombstone a couple weeks ago with the Thing episode. In Tombstone, at the OK Corral shootout, he is one of the cowboys who is killed.
Yeah, I can picture him.
Yes, and the funny thing about that, the guy from Wings, also Thomas Hayden Church, in the OK Corral and died.
Yeah.
So there, see, it's all coming together. The other one is Rob Morrow, is the guy from Northern Exposure. The kind of curly haired. I know why it's easy to get them all confused.
Okay.
So that's good. Yeah, that's not bad. So Jake, that's great. You went 12 for 15 on micro budget, big money movies. I mean, that's easily the best you've ever done. The only ones you missed were Once, Night of the Living Dead, and My Big Fat Greek Wedding. So 2 rom-coms and a movie from 1971 or whatever it is. So very commendable job.
Thank you.
All right. Jake, I think we're at that time now. I see the warm glow behind us, the glow that was not in any way in this movie. I think it's that time.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I start Sorry to break it to you. You're in the hot box.
I'm in the hot box. Each episode, instead of me steering the conversation, Jake peppers me with a series of questions that I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's just trivia. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes it's just for some reason you got to pick up the camera and show the girl peeing. What you got for me, Jake?
When's the last time you went camping?
Oh boy. When's the last time I went stayed outside?
Yeah, slept outside.
It has been at least 15 years. At least.
Oh, yeah.
It just hasn't come up. So on the flip side of it, the last time I slept in a tent is not the last time I've gone camping. So kind of as a joke, me and my wife, whenever we bought our house before the one we live in now, we didn't have furniture. We were waiting for it to cut. The movers were coming the next day from her apartment. Anyway, so we don't have anything in the bedroom. And I'm like, hey, you know what would be hilarious? Let's set up a tent in here. So that's what I did. I bought a tent, set it up in the bedroom, and we slept in a tent in the middle of a air conditioned bedroom because why not? But as far as being in a tent, I don't think I'm trying to think of the last time, and it's probably been, it might've been longer than that. I can't remember the last time I've slept outside.
Has it been like when you would go with us?
Probably, yes.
Out there?
That's been
our younger brother and our cousin?
Yes, I think that might've been the last time. Not that, so my favorite feeling in the world is being in a tent where, if it's outside, if it's windy or it's rainy and I'm inside dry and safe, it's my favorite feeling in the world. It's like my ASMR. And I love that feeling. But I think that exact moment you're thinking of where all four of us went out and camped, I think that was the last time.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay. In this movie, they go to the grocery store before they head out.
Yes.
All right. So what's your go-to food? If you're going to go camping, you're going to go out in the wilderness and have to sleep outside. What food do you think you're bringing?
Okay. So these days I'd probably, the way things have evolved, I'd probably be like, okay, well, I can get pouches of tuna, the pouches of dried tuna, and make that work and various things like that. For some reason, I always default to any time our dad went on trips whenever we were kids. And I'm like, I haven't eaten Beanie Weenies in years, but I'd probably buy a can of Beanie Weenies before I'd go on a camping trip, or the wafer Nutter Butters.
Yes.
Yes. Those type of, or fruit pies to go to, for, if, in reality, I'd probably just make sandwiches, probably, but in actual execution, I would probably do the weird stuff when somebody with me is like, why are you buying this? It's like,
right.
It's like, I in reality, I'd probably get a couple gallon jugs of water. I'd probably get some easy, Lunchables or something I don't need to keep cold or something, or whatever, something like that. But
beef jerky is the way to go.
Beef jerky. There you go. Yes. Beef jerky, packets of peanuts. If a big thing of pistachios.
There you go.
Yeah. By all means.
You're ready to go, man.
Hey, don't worry. Yeah. I see. I know what's up. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I'd go beef jerky, beanie weenies. Nowadays it's pretty easy with the tuna packets and stuff like that. It's a lot easier than it was even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, now you can kind of get the MRE type deals of survival foods and stuff like that. But as far as being on fun camping trips, not survival or fishing trips or whatever, our tastes are probably skewed towards the South. The fried pies, beanie weenies, I'm sure there's
honey buns and anything in Little Debbie's. Yes. All those type of things. Yes.
all Little Debbie has to
donut
offer.
sticks, every donut sticks and honey buns, or it's like, that's what you eat for breakfast. That's just what you eat for breakfast. Like, I don't care if it's a sugar treat, it's what you eat. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you estimate the last time you actually had a physical map inside your vehicle?
Okay.
Like a actual map.
So I was driving. I remember that because whenever I started driving, I had a big black atlas of it was probably this big. It was not small. It was right in the seats. I think our parents might have gotten for each of us whenever we got cars. So we got this big atlas, and you only care about the Texas, and you go through and you're like, okay, well, and so I started driving in 2003. So and I remember having it. So probably a physical map. I probably did it whenever I had a girlfriend who lived in a different city. So I was probably driving back and forth in 2004. So 2004, 2005, because after that point, it got to be like, okay, you can do maps quests, print it out, and then take it with you. But as like actual atlas, like looking at it, probably then, because I want to say like 2005, 2006, I got a Garmin, and I was like, this thing is revolutionary. And then I've never had to look at a map since. But I remember going places, like I had to have my seat empty because that thing was impossible to unfold in a car. Like the equivalent, like,
folding a map. Like there's no way no way any of our kids could fold a map.
And not only that, like you think it's like, okay, what's the most dangerous way to drive? Okay, if you're on your cell phone, if somebody is acting up, or if you have an atlas, like there's just this, it's like, okay, let me lift this up where I need to go. And it's like, it's in case you forgot your sunshade, you can put your atlas in your window. I mean, this thing was huge, but I mean, I remember it very easily. Like, and I remember whenever we were kids, our mom made us a laminated map of our route from Midland, Texas to Amarillo, Texas to visit our grandparents. And we're like, oh, this is where we're going and all the cities along the way. It was a fun little thing. Yeah.
I remember printing off the map quests and stuff like that. And like, having to get down, like whenever I went to college and stuff like that, going all the way across Texas, and keep having to refer to a piece of paper or a map or whatever. And
I would reset my odometer trip meter because I'd be like, it's like 3 miles. It's like turn left. Okay, there. And I'd reset it. And then I'd be like 142 miles. It's like, okay, there's 100. So, okay, here it's coming up. And so I just keep resetting my trip meter every time I take some turn.
Yeah. Man, some people will never know how it used to be.
It's wild. It's wild that this didn't seem that long ago. It does. Like, it's like we went from everybody had to have a map to maps are totally unnecessary in a matter of 5 years.
Yeah. It went quick.
Very.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you remember a scary childhood moment that we both experienced where it was the 4th of July?
Okay.
And we went out to our father's remote office.
Yes, I do.
We shot off fireworks in the parking lot.
Yes,
and then we were inside his office. We used the bathroom, kind of played around. And then we went back home. And then I think it was our mom said, what if you just looked back in the window, you just saw like a guy in a ski mask with a chainsaw or something?
It's like, well, and it's one of those, it was exactly the same as your wife with the scary stories they tell kids. Like, it's just to freak us out for the sake of freaking us out. It's like, she didn't need to say that. And it's like, one, she didn't need to say that. Two, it's like, are we going to look and talk ourselves into that being the case? And 3, we're in a car. We're going away from this. This is not like we're stuck there. Like, there's no reason to say this.
It freaked me out.
Absolutely. It was terrifying. And it was one of those things, it's like, I don't even want to look. Like, it's like, I know it's not there. but if I look, I'll talk myself into the fact that it is there.
Yeah. But hey, I can't beat up Mom too much because we took our kids down and did a camping trip.
Yeah.
Just on our land. We weren't going to sleep out there or anything, but we set up a tent and had s'mores and all that, Well, it got dark and we started telling spooky stories.
Sure.
Those kids were ready to get back in the house. They were, and I must say, I was like,
nailed it. I mean, why? It's so goofy. It's like, why is that like? Just like, oh, what's your sole purpose in life? It's like, I have to protect and provide for my children. It's like, what do you want to scare the everling hell out of them? It's like, hell yeah. Who knows why? I agree. Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know. Well, that's all I got for you, buddy. You know what? You're free to go.
Oh, that's good to know. I mean, I'll just keep traveling south. Nothing can go wrong.
Right.
So like I said, I had never seen this movie before. I was a little pleasantly surprised I thought it was going to be worse than it was. I don't really understand the critic audience disconnect. I don't know why critics loved it so much and audiences don't.
Yeah, really. The only, I just remember hearing people complaining about motion sickness.
Yeah. That at least that makes sense if that's the complaint, if that's the thing that sticks with them. But I mean, I think it's pretty solid. Like,
yeah, and like Heather's real annoying, but something I wanted to touch on is I think she's kind of playing a role of the dramatic. Ooh, I'm making a documentary on this spooky stuff. So she's kind of supposed to be annoying. So
I think she's probably playing like it's an improv. It's probably very improvisational. I guarantee script, they didn't have a script that says you have to say this. It's probably like the gang gets into a fight over them, and they kind of ran with that. I think yes, they play annoying characters, but they do it very well. And and whenever, especially when they go into the Mike at different points, he was like screaming, and you can hear a little break in his voice, and you're just like, oh, that's heartbreaking. It's just like you obviously, as a father of children, there's a difference between a scream of your child of just like, oh, you're making noise, and a scream of terror. It is
sounds wrong.
It is a different scream, and that scream stops me cold and be like, that's like lights and sirens, here I come. Yeah, that's a different type of scream. And whenever you hear that desperation, you're just like, oh, this is like, and whenever Heather gets upset and really breaks down, you're like, man, you're doing a good job in this. I think she gets a bad rep. I think like you said, they're supposed to be annoying. And then you, even as annoying as they are, they're still sympathetic.
I think they were supposed to play naive kids, in over their heads. And
I think
they accomplished it. I think
they did a great job. So what is your rating for this film? Not exactly one you want to rewatch.
No, not really. I mean, I like this movie for the fact that it actually freaks me out. Kind of like I can, it kind of scares me. And so I don't know. I would give it a seasonal.
I'll watch it if it's
okay.
If it's
I'll watch. I'll watch it. If I need to find a scary movie.
I give it a 3.0 out of 5. I think it probably lingers a little too much on the getting lost and getting there and getting there before it's only 81 minutes. I mean, it's on Hulu, so go watch it. It's a real quick watch. It's easy to watch. So I highly recommend. It's if you like camping, it's
you may never do it again.
You may never do it again. I think that just about does it for this episode of the Film Critic, the Common Man. Thank you so very much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at nebasbin, on Letterboxd and Neb810, on Instagram at Ben Miller Movies. Check out my website at Ice Cream for Freaks. You can follow my other writing at The Film Experience and Cinema Scholars. A lot of great stuff coming up this week. Great new movie review coming out this week called The Banshees of Inisherin with Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. Great movie coming out. Highly recommended. It's one of my favorites of the year. Have the review coming on Friday. You can also find me on other pods. I'm the David Thewlis of Podcasting. Jake, where can the people find you?
Out in the woods, man.
Out in the woods, just living life. It's like as long as you have cigarettes, you're good to go, buddy.
Cigarettes and honey buns, bud.
Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Critic Comment Pod. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast. Spooky season continues next week, and we got a banger. We got The Silence of the Lambs coming up next week. It might be a 2-hour podcast. We got a lot to get into. It is going to be great. We will catch you next time. Thank you so very much for joining us. Have a good one, guys.
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick. What's the trick?